Is there any opposition? Hearing no opposition.
Well, we have to check the Zoom audience.
Okay.
So ask the Zoom audience, but I don't see them. Do you see them, Judy?
The Zoom audience I
Yeah.
cannot see.
No, just ask.
All
Hi,
right.
Roger. This is Ann
Is there
Keck.
any opposition? Say, that's the easiest way to start, Adele.
Is
Roger,
there opposition? Please raise your
Any
hand.
nays, yeah, raise your hands.
Roger, can you hear me?
I can't see you, but no opposition.
No opposition.
Good.
So it's unanimous.
Excellent. The unanimous slate
They
is.
didn't hear anything. Now this is weird. Someone says they can't, and then someone says they can.
Well,
I think it's that this wasn't picking her up.
okay. We're having audio visual problems here, but Roger and Judy seem to be correcting.
I think that was an individual person.
Okay, are we good to go?
Yeah, we're good to go.
The vote is over. The nominations are accepted. The slate is good. And we look forward to a long and happy association with this wonderful group of great folks. Very, very hard. And please get to know them. And kudos to Roger. Really, I can't say enough good things about Roger. And Tommy in the audience, you've done a wonderful job.
We'll pay you
Here's
later.
our brand new president. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do this every year. We have a slate of officers. So the next.
Judy, they're still saying they
Are they
didn't
still
hear
not
anything.
hearing
And
us? That's because this is over here.
well, normally it's here. I mean,
Okay, can you hear me? Can you all hear me now on Zoom? Okay, technically, I do need you to ask again. Can I do it? Can I do it? Okay. We want you to understand, was there any opposition to the slate of officers that was presented, or are you good to go with us? Yeah, if you can raise your hand if you've got, okay, then I am going to be your president. Oh, you're stuck with me. Ha. And thank you to the other folks who are going to be on the board. And now I'd like to ask Nat, going to announce the contest.
Thank you, Judy. Okay, we had 18 submissions for the Imagine Short Story Contest. And before I announce the winners,
Look this way, just look into this kind
how's that?
of.
Okay. Before I announce the winners, I would like to thank our judges who were very gracious. Jeanne Rowley, Jan Coshnear, and Deborah Taylor-French. They went over and above what I expected them to do in my personal experience in sending out work for submissions, in calls for. I would like to announce the winners of the Imagine Short Story Contest. The third place winner is Joan Goodreau for her excellent story, Alexa and Me. And Joan, I hope you're out there on Zoom to hear this. Good job. Second place, Crissi Langwell. She wrote a story called How to Survive the Wild, a terrific story. And Chrissy's out there having fun somewhere, yay. And Jeane, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Jusaitis, is that correct? Okay. A little plaque for you. And your story. Great, good job with Betsy and all loved. Everyone for all your submissions.
Awesome. And you know, we do about 3 contests a year, and we love seeing what people are contributing. And oh, you know what? I'm going to do something. Come on up here, sweetie. Okay. We have Cynthia Gregory to tell you why you want to submit to Being on Fire.
Good morning, good afternoon, actually. Hi, I'm Cynthia Gregory, and I did agree to be the editor for this year's anthology. First of all, I want to let you know we've extended the deadline, so if you haven't been able to submit yet, you still have another month. So that's exciting, so that we'll get some more entries. And we have had some technical difficulties, but rest assured that if you've already submitted, I will be getting your submission very soon, and we'll go into the process of evaluating, judging, and so forth. Anyway. So, On Fire. On Fire.
Much better.
It's been a while since I've talked live. So yes, the anthology is On Fire. The theme is about heat. We have the heat of passion. We have the heat of wildfires. We have cuisine. There are so many ways to express heat in our everyday lives. We'd like you to bring the heat to your short story. It's a 2,500 word limit, and else I can say about it. I'm excited. Does anybody have any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Cynthia. Okay, we're having a little bit of, is there anyone here
I'll get it.
today for their very first time? Oh my gosh! Yay.
How many do we have?
Are you both members? I know Cynthia is. Are you a member? And could you tell us your name? Could you stand up and tell us your name really loud? Thank you. We welcome you. And this group is amazing. Roger, what's our number right now? We're at about 260?
255.
255 members. And you're going to start seeing very shortly a request for you to renew. And I hope that you all will do that. And the renewal period's for quite a bit of time, but the sooner you do it, the better. And if you want to make it super simple, become an express member, which means you don't have to pay every time because you're going to get a discount. You get to have that all taken care of, and it's way easy. Now for this year, we know it's been challenging to everybody, and we're continuing to do the hybrid meetings, which means people are in the room, for those of you who are on Zoom, and there are people on Zoom, and there are people all over the country now who can attend our meetings who couldn't do that before, so we're very happy about that. We're just going to continue, and we're recording the meetings. So if you've registered, you will get a link to watch the meeting in the future. For those of you on Zoom, just an added incentive to start coming back to the room if you can. The members can display and sell their books from the back of the room and the side of the room. So just a little bit of a tweak. There's one more thing I want to show you, because not all of you have seen it. Hang on one second. This is our brand new poetry anthology. And we just had the poetry anthology launch at Linda Reed's home in Rohnert Park. It was amazing. And Roger created a video, and all of us who read at the event are on the video. So you can see that. It is a public video, so we're very excited about that.
It's a member only.
Oh,
Member.
on the anthology?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. On the anthology,
So they'll get a link, Judy.
yeah, the members all will get a link to watch that video. It was a beautiful day, absolutely beautiful. And these are here, and they're here for you to purchase. So thank you. And am I leaving anything out? I think we're good. So what I'd like to do now is introduce our speaker for today. And I'm going to be very good and read this carefully here. So I've known Betsy for quite a long time, and she is amazing. So Betsy Graziani Fasbinder is a storyteller in all of its forms, and it's nearly a religion. As a therapist for more than 30 years, and as a genre-jumping author, as a speaker, as a speaking coach, I need one today, and in her role as a writing coach, she strives to tell and help others tell their lived and imagined stories on the page or on the stage with clarity, candor, and heart. Betsy is an award-winning author, a thrice-published ghostwriter, and with her skills as a developmental writing coach, she's helped dozens of clients transform their books from first draft to submission-ready manuscript, which is what we all want to do. Her goal with every writer is to help each of them find their own voice and the essence of the story they want to tell. She's host and producer of the Morning Glory Project, an interview podcast featuring the stories of survivors, thrivers, innovators, and trailblazers. She is the author of Fire and Water, Filling Her Shoes, and From Page to Stage. Inspiration, tools, and public speaking tips for writers. Welcome our speaker, Betsy, and let's learn how we can make our stories come from the heart.
And Rafa, can I ask you to turn the... So hi Zoomers, welcome, I'm glad you're here. You'll communicate in chat if you're unable to hear or see or whatever. So you should be able to see slides and occasionally see me. That means I have to have my lipstick on and all that, right? So welcome everyone, and all of us in here are story lovers. There's a really big difference though between a story that you write and that is important to you versus a story that's ready for the public to read. And that's a transformational journey that takes a while. So what we're here to talk about is developmental editing. Some people call it story coaching, developmental coaching, whatever, all kinds of ways to help you get your story from that first draft phase to the final finish, or to this, I say submission ready because once it gets in the hands of editors at a place, it's gonna go through another meat grinder, right? It's gonna be changed in some way, other way again. So we're gonna be talking about this. Now, I happen to think that writing, or my experience is that writing is a very personal and solitary act. It's something we do alone, right? Many writers, not all, but many are introverts. We want to go deep into our story. So the story kind of goes from deep and individual, and then maybe we've got a critique group or a writing partner that we might work with. And then it gets a little bigger, right? Our audience gets a little bit bigger. And then we have to start thinking about how other people react to it. And then it gets really big if we publish it or make it out in the world, right? Then other people bring their stories to us. So I often think that the first draft is for me, and the rest of the drafts are for me to see if other people want to read it too. And I view that first draft as a precious thing. Now, Moliere said that writing is a lot like prostitution. He said, first you do it for yourself, then you do it among close friends, and then you do it for money, right? So you want to get paid for what you do. Now, I don't think writing is exactly like prostitution, mind you, but I think that the information's out. Now, I tend to think of it in another metaphor. I tend to think of that first draft as you're thinking it, as you're writing it. I think of it like a little baby bird. You know, it's a really precious thing. It needs to be protected. You need to have free rein to say whatever the heck you need to say on the page. Some people who are writing memoir, for example, are doing so as a process of their healing. If they've survived a traumatic event or a loss or abuse, or if they're travel writers and they're trying to kind of formulate their ideas. So there's a baby bird quality. I want to protect that first draft, right? Keep it in its little nest. But then that bird's got to fly, and it has to get stronger, and it needs less protections, and it needs a little less feeding. So you want your manuscript, your story, whether it's book length or individual story, right? You want that to go from baby bird in the nest all the way to blue angels flying powerfully. And that's what developmental editing can be part of to help you get there. So what we want to do is we want to build some bridges between that baby bird stage and the blue angel phase. And that's where developmental writing comes in. So what we're going to talk about today. First of all, what is developmental coaching or developmental editing, story coaching? We're going to use all those words. What is it and why would you do it? When do you do it? When in the process of your writing do you either employ a pro or an amateur developmental coach? How do they work? What do they do? And by the way, how much? Because, you know, right? Because here's what I'm going to say about the how much. In the gold rush, we're in gold country here, right? In the gold rush, there were a few people that made a whole lot of money off of the gold. And then there were a whole lot of people that made money off of selling pans and tarp and wagons, right? So writers, we always think that we're going to be that one that hits the gold. But the reality is that lots of writers have to pay other people along the way. You have to pay editors and helpers and coaches and classes and all that stuff. So there is a how much quality of this. You're going to, if you choose to pay somebody for it. And then how would you pick the who? How do you find somebody like that? And by the way, this is not just an ad for me. I want you to think about it in general, because I won't be your editor for most of you. If you're going to pick an editor, you want to know a little bit about what they've done. So this is me at Book Passage, Corte Madera. I've published, as Judy introduced, the 3 books, including published my own 3 books, which is a novel, Fire and Water, a memoir, Filling Her Shoes, and a how-to in From Page to Stage. And then I have a podcast. So the reason I put that up there is, sure, we're all marketing, I'm showing you my stuff. But mostly what I'm doing is saying this. If you're picking somebody to be a developmental coach and they're published, read their book. I want to know the quality of that person. And I'm doing this to let you have a bit of notion about my credibility in terms of what I bring to the table. So the what and the why. What is developmental editing or developmental coaching? A developmental edit occurs before the publication of the manuscript and focuses mainly on improving big picture story elements. That's according to Wikipedia that knows everything, right? So, but in a way it kind of capsulizes this. It's about looking at the story. What it isn't, what it does is it helps you look at structure. Is the shape of the story, does it start where it should start? Does it end where it should end? That's always a question, right? When I turned in my first novel to the person that became my de facto developmental editor, which was an agent at the time, she said, your story starts at page 40. Really? I said, shocked. What? She was absolutely right. The story did start at 40. Those first 40 pages, you can either view those as a waste of my time, like I shouldn't have written them, or that as an author, I had to mull through that stuff. I was writing background and setup and all that backstory stuff that was important for me to know, but not for you to read. So remember the baby bird in the nest? I needed all that stuff. I needed all that food, but you didn't need it. So when? So it's look for structure, for genre. Sometimes you think if you're writing in a specific genre, you want somebody that understands that genre to help you along the way. If you're a romance writer, you want somebody that understands romance. If you're a suspense writer, you want them to understand that. If you're writing a memoir, you might want somebody who understands the psychological matters. I wouldn't be qualified to edit a medical thriller. Now, I could edit it for the story, I can tell you whether it works or not, but I wouldn't be a good consultant on the medical matters. But I've edited medical thrillers because I can look at the story. So when I say I wouldn't be a good editor, that means I wouldn't be a good copy editor for that. That means I wouldn't be a good fact checker for that. It's also, developmental editing helps you figure out the pacing. Does it sag? Does it move too slowly here? Wait, did I get lost? What happened? How'd that happen already? So a developmental reader reads your story for the holes and the gaps and the jumps, for the pace. Is it moving along or is it dragging in the middle? They also read for tone. Is the tone consistent? Have you ever gone to a movie that in the trailer looked like a comedy? And when you got there, it was like a hack 'em up, bloody, dramatic thing, and you think, what the heck, how did I come to this movie? Well, you want somebody who understands what kind of story you're trying to tell. Because you don't want the cover, or that's down with publishing, but you don't want to mislead people thinking that it's going to be one kind of story, and it's a completely different one. You're also, this is one of those tricky elements we're going to talk more about, but we want to also, in addition to the tone, in other words, what's the tone of the story? Is it scary or dark? Is it funny or sardonic? Is it sarcastic? Is it, what is the tone of it? But what is the voice of it? And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Also, a developmental editor looks for character development. I can't tell you how many manuscripts I've read and I've said, what in the heck is she so mad about? I see her blowing up on page 52, but I have no reason. Is she just crazy or whatever? And it's because they haven't developed that character such that I, the reader, can understand why they're so mad. And lastly, got to get a fancy word in there because we're writers, right? For verisimilitude. In other words, authenticity. Does it ring true? And when I say ring true, I don't mean is it a factual thing. Mary Doria Russell's The Sparrow, did you read this book? It's the book that hangs in my head forever, right? It's about an intergalactic traveling priest that goes and is altered by a population of beings on another planet. Now, that sounds absurd. That book is 100% believable. There's verisimilitude there. Read a recent book. It's called Nothing to See Here. Anybody read this? I can't believe this book, it's got to become a film. Nothing to See Here. Here's the premise. A reluctant, kind of accidental nanny woman becomes a nanny of two children who have a peculiar malady. And the peculiar malady is that when they get really upset or overwrought, highly emotional, they burst into flames. Okay? Now that's the most ridiculous premise ever. And about a third of the way through reading the book, I'm thinking, I wonder if I would do that. I wonder if that's how I would handle a flame-burning child, right? If the story can suck you in to have you think, what would I do if? It has verisimilitude, right? So it can be a preposterous premise, but you've got to write it like it's real. Make sense, everybody? By the way, if you want to ask questions, feel free to interrupt. Those of you on Zoom, if you'd let our chat hosters know that you raise a hand or something, and then we'll listen to a question. Or you write a question in chat, excuse me.
Robin read The Sparrow.
Oh, somebody did read The Sparrow.
It's an amazing story. So.
The Sparrow, please don't miss it. And I think the other one is Children of God. I think it's Children of God and The Sparrow, both written by her, their sequel. So I said I was going to mention more about voice, and here's what I mean. So your story should sound like your story, like only you could write it. You don't want to imitate somebody else. I love what David Sedaris said. He said, write relentlessly until you find your voice and then use it. If you're a new writer, you may not yet know what your voice is. And you may alter, that doesn't mean you can't write in different qualities. I might write a really sassy, sarcastic little piece over here, and I might write a heartwarming piece over here. But if you read it, you might be able to recognize that it's me in that. I would hope that you would. What developmental editing isn't? It is not copy editing. Well, and I say what it isn't, what it shouldn't be, or maybe it is just a little bit of, okay? So here's what I mean by that. It's not copy editing. Copy editing is when somebody goes through and they're checking for grammar, for consistency. Does the guy have blue eyes on page 2 and blue eyes on page 222? Or was there a switch there? Was there really that kind of bullet in the Civil War? You know, a copy editor is looking for the authenticity, for the consistency of the story, and for the grammar and structure of the piece. That's not what developmental editing is. It's not proofreading. It's not catching all the spelling errors and typos. It's not a sensitivity edit. And by sensitivity edit, what I mean is what's going on a lot now. If you're writing a piece, for example, if I'm a Caucasian person and I'm writing from the point of view of an African American, I might want somebody that's African American to read that, or somebody that has sensibilities about diversity and those things. I might want somebody to read that so that I don't say something truly offensive, or I'm not really missing the mark. And by the way, I just had this done on a piece, and I was so happy that that person rescued me from saying something really, really insensitive and stupid. Okay? So a sensitivity read is an important thing to do if you're writing controversial material, or if you're writing outside of your own demographic, if you will. Okay? And it's not ghostwriting. Ghostwriting is you're a subject matter expert, or you've lived a story and you want to write it, but you don't want to write it at all. So you hire somebody to write the book for you. And that person's job is to crawl into your head for as long as it takes to try to make the book sound like your book. I've done it 3 times. I don't believe I'll ever do it again. If you're good at it, it's great, but it's also, you really have to love the person that you're with. Plus, you don't get any credit. You don't get to, you're a ghost. So I can't put my ghost written books up here, right? I'm the anonymous, invisible person behind the curtain. Now, the reason I say that what it's not or shouldn't be, but it is a little bit, is I'm a story editor, but if I'm catching really dramatic grammatical problems, I'm gonna point that out, particularly if they're getting in the way of the story. One of the big things, a lot of people do not know how to punctuate dialogue. They just don't, and that sounds like, the proofreader will get that. Yeah, but if I'm reading it and the punctuation is such that I can't even tell who's talking or what the story is about, then it's a bigger problem than just a proofreading punctuation problem. That's one of the big ones that people really, really struggle with. And I have a little freebie thing that I will send you if you'd like, if you're willing. Now, this is the marketing part, Mom.
Thank you for demonstrating.
Okay. I'm going to give you a couple of things, and Zoom folks, I can send you part of this. I can't give you all of it because it's something to mail. So if you will put your name on here with your ever so carefully written email address, notice the ever so carefully written part, then I will send you a sample of all different ways to punctuate different kinds of dialogue, with tags, without tags, with actions, without actions, all of that stuff. Oh, you beautiful thing, you. Thank you. So if you'll do that, and you'll also, passing this around the room, and we can send it to our Zoomers as well, and you'll take one of these cards, because it's got all my info on it and books, but you'll also get to take, and this is a bonus that's outside the topic of the class. I have a little bag here, Zoomy people, of googly eyes. Because when you're speaking on Zoom, you have to remember that the camera that makes eye contact to the people on the other end of the Zoom is there. When I'm looking over here, or if I'm looking at my screen, the Zoom people, I look like the Brady Bunch kids, right, looking around. So on my home computer, on my laptop, even on my phone, which I don't know where it is, oh, there it is. I put little googly eyes to remind myself that that's where you look. If you look at yourself on the camera, then the eyeball here will see the top of your head. All those young women that know how to do the selfies, they know exactly where to put their eyes. So you're gonna help yourself to a card. You're gonna put your name and email here, and then you'll get the dialogue coaching cheat sheet that I'm gonna send, and you can help yourself to a pair of googly eyes. Zoomers, I'm sorry I can't get the googly eyes to you. All right? So Judy, if you'll wrangle that.
I have a question for you.
Okay, question?
Because we're seeing a lot of audio first, or audio books, with dialogue, are you seeing changes in how people do that?
Okay, so the question, I'll repeat it for our Zoom audience. Because people are putting things in audiobooks, are we seeing a different way of punctuating dialogue? And so I'm gonna answer that in the kinda.
Okay.
Some are not changing every word, a word on the page at all. I had my own novel read by an actor, because it was a drama, and I read reasonably well, but I'm not an actor, so I hired an actor to read my book. She read it exactly as it is on the page, but that was 9 years ago. And what I'm seeing now is, and what I coach people to do when they're gonna be reading their stories, I often have them get rid of the tags when they're speaking their story, because they might be, if there's only 2 people on the stage and your dialogue, you can kind of make it sound like this person and then that person. You can do things with your voice and your body that imply a speaker change. On the page, you still often either need a tag, like I said, so-and-so, or you need, Marcia lifted her cup. Boy, you really ticked me off, right? We know that's Marcia talking because she just picked up the cup. So there are ways to get around using so many tags, but I'm also finding, Judy, if this answers your question too, I'm also finding that in writing, some people are trying to do no tags at all. And then I have to read like, I think, wait a minute, I thought Tommy was speaking, and really that's Geraldine. Oh shoot, wait, now I've got to go back and read the whole page again.
Yeah.
The minute you have people going, wait a minute, I'm confused, and they go back and read a page, they're out of the story. You've broken the spell.
Yeah. Okay. But they'll also be out of the story if every time someone speaks, they're saying they're having a tag on it. You know,
Yeah, and also if they're redundant. And also if you do what I call a cheater tag, which is you didn't think of a very strong verb. So you say something like, she said coyly, or she said with rancor in her voice. How have you shown me her rancor instead? Okay. So this is what it's not. And I say, but a little bit, because when I'm doing a developmental editing, I've got an active pen. So it's going to. So people tend to get a little bit extra. All right. So when somebody sends me a manuscript, and I often work after they've done draft 1 or 2 and they're sending me the whole enchilada, right? This is what they feel right when they send it, like, oh, I've just sent it into the void. And often, I'd say about 75% of the time, oops, did something happen?
Somebody's hearing
very
it
strange.
loud. It may be from all the other people that we're getting comments, but I don't hear it. So.
I don't know. She said she was hearing a heartbeat and it was going up and down. I don't know.
This is registering my heartbeat?
Oh, it's not on.
Oh, it is.
Oh, well, then they probably are. They might be.
Might be your heartbeat.
Oh, you're hearing my heartbeat. That's kind of sweet. Let's fix that, shall we?
Yeah, we're gonna.
Okay.
I don't know.
I must have been more nervous than I thought I was if my heart's thumping that hard. All right.
Well,
So
you're not. This isn't working, so they're not hearing you through this. They're hearing you through this.
Yeah.
So you can just turn that off.
This has been an interesting audio day.
So public speaking tip number 2, roll with it, honey.
Yeah. Stuff happens.
All right.
I think you're good.
So here's what folks feel. They've sent me their manuscript. They've been working on it. They send it off to me and I say, okay, it's gonna be 3 to 5 weeks. You know, I'm gonna spend a lot of time with it. I can read it faster than that. You don't want me to. I wanna take it slowly. I'm gonna take some time with it because I read it like a reader. I pretend it's a book that just arrived in the mail and I'm reading it to see if I like it. Okay? So they feel like they've sent it off in the void. About 75% of the time, about 2 days after they've sent it, they write back and say, here's a different version. I fixed chapter 3, because they're all panicky, right? How many of you would be tempted to do that? Come on, we've all done that. So it feels like that. And then when it's time for me to give the feedback, this is how they tend to look. What you talking about? What do you mean that character's not lively enough? So we have to watch. When you're asking for feedback, you've got to be open to it. To revise, think of the word, to revise, revision, to see again, to look at it differently. That's what a developmental editor or a story coach is going to ask you to do. They're going to ask you to look at it again. Because you're right here when you're writing it. I know in my own book, that's the case. And when I pull it back like this, I go, oh, I didn't see that. I'm not a very good writer, but I'm an excellent rewriter, says James Mitchell. That's what everyone should be. No, very, very few of us crank out a first draft that's perfect. If you do, please. So on your side of the developmental edit or the story coaching, here's what I would ask of you. One, before you begin, specify your intentions. If your goal is to get Random House to publish your book, that's one goal. If your book is to preserve a family legacy and have something for your grandchildren, nothing wrong with that, but that's going to be a different kind of feedback. Because what it's going to take to get it into Barnes and Noble versus it being a really good story for your family may be two different things. It doesn't mean it's quality better or worse, it just means it's a different application. Be clear on the deets, and by that I mean the details. Make sure you understand how your editor's going to work, what they're going to charge, how much time it's going to take, what kind of feedback are you going to get. Just really clarify with them. And I say really listen to the critique. If you bother to have somebody, whether it's a colleague or peer or a pro that you're paying, and you want to be like that little girl with the arms crossed, you're really wasting your time and theirs, frankly. Now, does that mean you have to agree with everything? Certainly not. We're going to get to that. Be realistic, but maybe you want Random House to publish your book, but you know what? That's hard. That's hard. It's a comparatively rare thing, and it may be that your coach can advise you about other alternatives to publishing. And some of you, whether it's self-publishing or hybrid publishing or small presses, or there are dozens and dozens of opportunities out there. But sometimes people get so fixed on only one option that they don't budge. So I say reach, but be realistic. Are we okay, Roger?
Yeah, it's just,
I'm just gonna say, please.
I'm reading body language in the
no,
room.
it's just, we just keep saying there's a drum beat, but I think they probably told you very much.
Okay, it's no longer
It's
my
not
mark.
you.
Okay.
It's not you. You're good to go.
Please have a step back.
And the next one now, stay true to yourself and your story. So on one hand, I'm asking you to please listen to the feedback. But on the other hand, I'm asking you to understand your story and understand what you're trying to say and be true to yourself. Accept a fallible but skilled editor. Here's what I mean by that. If I'm reading a whole book, how many times have you read or been in a meeting and somebody says, oh, hey, what about the Halloween event? And somebody says, she already covered that, right? And they're all pissy about it. That happens when you're reading books too. So sometimes I'm on page 122 and I'm saying, who's Margot? And I get, well, I told you who Margot was on page 3. Well, that was a lot of pages ago. And she hasn't come up again and I forgot. And by the way, so will your reader. If I didn't hold on to Margot, my guess is they won't either. Or maybe I just had a bad moment and I did forget something. It happens. So in our feedback, I sometimes bring something up and they remind me and I go, oh, you're right. I do see that there. I failed to remember that. That's okay. So it's more of a conversation than a rule book that a developmental letter gets you. And really your responsibility is to strive to write the best story that you can possibly write. You're wanting to be stretching. So you want to find the right balance between accepting the editorial input, and telling your own story. And that sounds like an easy thing, but it's not, because I'll tell you a danger that I had earlier in my writing world. I had a critique group, and we would bring chapters to each other each week, right? And then they'd say, well, oh gosh, that's really interesting. What about, I think she should have red hair, or I think she did. And so pretty soon I was writing everybody else's suggestions into my story, and I ended up with this Winchester mystery house of a book with a bunch of stuff slapped on it. And it wasn't my story. I was answering all of their questions. So the same thing can happen with a pro editor, is yes, you want to listen, and if you trust that person, they're giving you good information, you want to honor it, but you still want to say, yeah, but I have a story to tell. So here's what I tend to do. In the hands of a trusted editor, and by the way, I've had a stinker of an editor that was terrible, who charged me a boatload of money, read my whole novel, and just said, it doesn't work. That was her feedback. It doesn't work. Well, thanks a lot, And after she said that, after the check had cleared, because otherwise it probably wouldn't have. Okay? You had one of those too. It happens. Well, here's the thing to remember about every profession, including editors. It's a bell-shaped curve. 20% are marvelous, 20% are truly terrible, and the remaining 60% are somewhere along here. You want somebody on this side of the equation. So if you have somebody that you trust, and we'll talk about how to find them in a minute, but if you have somebody that you trust, here's the ratio that I found. I get their feedback from a trusted, skilled editor, and about 70% of it I go, duh, of course she's right. Oh man, how did I miss that? Really, about 70% of the time. About 20% of the time I go, well, kinda. I'm not sure about that. Oh, part of that works and part of that doesn't. Yeah, oh, yeah. And a little bit of it, yeah, she's right. Okay, so that 20%, I'm grappling with it and figuring out, maybe taking pieces and not of the piece. And 10% I say, nope, you missed that. That's not mine. Now, if I was in the hands of a not so trustworthy editor, it'd be the opposite, but why would I pay that person? Make sense? So here's the other thing is, when you get your feedback back, most people are sitting there, they're just waiting for that thing to come across the threshold, right? And when you're getting that back, the urge is to just dive in and fix things. But when it comes to revision, I'm going to invite you to slow your roll a little bit. Taking in the feedback and really reflecting on it. Do what writers do best when they're not at the keyboard, which is think about it, dream about it, daydream about it a little bit, walk around. Gee, do I really think she should have red hair? You know what? By golly, she should. Let yourself meander a little bit. Don't just dive in and start fixing. What I often do when I get a manuscript, an edited piece back, I go in and I fix the low-hanging fruit, the punctuation junk, just obvious little stuff, but I don't change anything big. I wait. I let myself dream. I let myself take walks. I let myself think about it for a while. Then I go and fix. I recently did a developmental edit for somebody, and the day after, and when somebody gets a developmental edit back from me, they get literally thousands of notes through their whole manuscript. She came back 2 days later and said, I finished editing, would you read it again? Wait, in 2 days? No. And I said, no, I will not. You haven't reflected on that. You fixed the mechanicals, but you can't possibly have addressed the bigger plot concerns or character concerns that I've got. You can't, unless you are an absolute dynamo or you time travel, I don't see how you could do that. So slow your roll a little bit. Allow yourself the luxury of really reflecting. Come on, how many of you reflected or dreamed of a book for a long time before you ever put one word on the page? That's part of the creative process, and you want to nurture it. So when do you use a developmental editor? So we've all been there. And have you ever heard about the 6 stages of the creative process? Okay, the 6 stages are these. Stage 1, this is awesome. Stage 2, this is tricky. Stage 3, this is shit. Stage 4, I'm shit. Stage 5, this is tricky. Stage 6, this is awesome. Okay? So we do that, and by the way, we may do that hundreds of times in the same writing process. And we get ourselves frustrated and paralyzed and freaked out. So I've brought a guest or two with me today. The first one is, this is my inner critic voodoo doll. My inner critic voodoo doll. I've made these for several of my friends. And I just made her name, by the way, is in real life, this is just her avatar. In real life, she is named Dominique. She looks a lot like Angelina Jolie. And she has nothing but terrible things to say about me, my writing, and everything else that I've ever done. So some of the things that she says a lot, like she calls me lazy a lot. She tells me that I'm unoriginal. She tells me that I'm spineless. She tells me that, writing makes my butt look bigger. All kinds of stuff.
Does she
And
sit
so
on your shoulder?
she sits in my office by my computer, and she has a black heart. I don't know if you can see it, Zoomers, but there's a little black heart there. But I do have a little pin, which is when I start to hear that inner critic voice, I put the pin and I say, fine, Angelique, go ahead, go away. And it sounds like a silly little thing, but this little talisman has helped me a lot. So you gotta, in your writing process, you've gotta put your inner critic away. Listen to it. That's different than your inner editor. Your inner critic says, you're crap. You'll never make it. This is the stupidest thing you've ever done. Why waste your time? Okay? That's the inner critic. The inner editor says, I don't know if this sentence sings. I don't know if I'm getting at this character. I'm confused about where the plot's going. That's fine. We don't want to kill that off when we put Angelique away. Dominique, excuse me. I have a friend named Angelique. So I also brought another guest, which is this one. My writing group, we've been in the same writing group for almost 25 years. We call ourselves Bella Quattro, beautiful four. And very early in our writing process, it's overwhelming to think of writing a whole book or revising a whole book or fixing a whole book after you get it back from an editor. And so we started, I don't know who started it, but one of us started with, well, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. One bite at a time. So we have, over the 25 years, exchanged and given each other little elephant gifts a lot. And I say it in a silly way, but I have elephants in my office to remind myself, one bite at a time, honey. One bite at a time. Don't get overwhelmed by this. So when in the process, don't wait until you're in so much agony that you flip and hate your book. But when you're really struggling, that's when you may need some outside input. And that might be from your peers, if you have a really effective writing group. But be careful about this. My cousin Judy taught English. Sorry, I said Judy and I realized that you were. My cousin Desdemona teaches English, and she's going to be my editor. Well, I'm sure she's good at grammar and punctuation. Is she an author? Does she know about storytelling? Be careful not elevating. And also, if she's your cousin, what if she gives you advice that you don't like? It gets complicated. So I think you want to have more than your cousin Desdemona. So what's the best time for developmental edit? Some do it as you go. I have worked with people who said, you know what? I've wanted to write the story of my whatever I lived through for a long time, but I don't know where to start. And I've never really been a writer before. I've never had any classes. And I've worked with people where they send a chapter, we talk it through, they get some coaching, and they get words on the page. I'm currently working for an organization called the Narrative Project, and that's exactly what we do. We're working with I have 4 members in my critique group. They send pages to me, we give feedback, and they continue to write it. But we give very specific kinds of feedback, and by the way, it's regulated. It's not just somebody saying, I want her to have red hair. It's not that. It needs to be really thoughtful input. So some people do developmental coaching as they go, with either a one-on-one coach or in a critique group or something like that. Sometimes it's when they've finished a draft. They've finished either draft 1 or 2, and they want to know, do I have a book here? I don't know. I'm not sure if it's in the right structure or not, whatever. That's a good time to send it. When you're stuck. I just sent a book. I'm in the middle of writing a novel, and I'm going to tell you it's a mess. I knew it was a mess. It was a COVID book and COVID messed my head up a little bit, like it did lots of us. We were all bummed, and it became a lot more apocalyptic than I wanted it to be, And so I, like a therapist sees a therapist, an editor gets an editor. So I sent it to a developmental editor because I just didn't know. I didn't know. And she sent it back. There's a lot wrong with that book. There's a lot wrong with it. So I set that book aside for a while. We're not divorced, but we're having a trial separation. We're seeing other books for the moment. I may very well come back. What she said is I probably have 2 books in there. Okay, so that's going to take some major untangling. And I got to live with that for a little while before I know if that's really the way I want to go. Sometimes you just want a structure feedback, like, is this where it begins? Is it a story like Titanic where we know the boat sinks at the beginning and we're going to tell some backstory then, or is it like Wild where we're going to just be on the trail for 92 days? What's the structure and shape? And then sometimes there is something that I call developmental edit 2.0 with several of my authors who've gotten it ready, published ready. I've done a first developmental edit, they've spent time, they've done a revision, and they say, now I'd really like you to read it again. So I've been hired twice by the same editor, the same author, several times. Then it gets submitted. So it's another layer of polish. That's another investment of time and money and energy, but it got their book published ready. So how does the developmental, if you're hiring a pro as opposed to peers, how does it work? And in terms of the technology, even though I'm capable of doing track changes and Google Docs and all that stuff, I do a very low-tech feedback process. They send me their book electronically. They pay an extra $40 or $50 for me to print it and spiral bind it at Staples. And I read it like a book and I write all over it. And they've got my notes. And then I type up a summary sheet of what I call big picture strengths, big picture problems, okay? Little stuff that's bugging me, mechanicals. They get a typed up list and they get a 2-hour feedback where we're on Zoom or in person where we talk it through and ask questions. So that's how I do it. Some other people do it. The editor I just worked with on mine, all intact track changes, sent it back to me. And now I've got a thing that looks like, it looks like a roadmap of Los Angeles. It's got so much blue and red all over it. It's useful though. She's very helpful and that worked for me. So you want to find out how that developmental editor works and if it's going to work for you. Also, how much time are they going to take? I can't do 2 books a week. I just couldn't possibly do that because I have other endeavors too. So I do about a novel, I do novels and memoir. I do about 1 a month. So that's about how long it takes me to do it. So then there's the how much, right? Because it does come down to that. Now, I want to frame this and say there's a range. I have gotten developmental editing estimates for up to $20,000. Yeah. That ain't going to happen. And I've gotten some that are more around $1,000. Whenever you think about it, if you're going to have somebody read 350 pages and give you notes, how much do you think that would be worth for you to do that? And I tend to like to think of it this way. Writers don't have to buy oil paints or canvases or photographic development or clay or bronze or any of the kinds of things that other artists use. This is our art supplies. This is the stuff you have to spend some money on sometimes. So for me, it depends on 2 things: the length of the book, the level of the writing, because if it's a very beginning writer, it tends to take more, and the density of the writing. You know, in other words, if it's super hard, some is slower than others. So it's typically somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000-ish. Not because I couldn't charge more, I have, but I like it also to be accessible. So, but who? How do you find a who? Okay, how do you find a person? First of all, trusted referrals. How did I find my developmental editor? I went to my publisher, whom I trust a great deal. She has a whole corral filled with people that she trusts, and she connected me with somebody that she thought would have the right sensibilities for the book that I was writing. You could get this from another author that you know that had a great experience, but don't just go onto the online and search. I just think it's a mistake. Now, with one exception, there's an organization called Author Accelerator that I'm actually in training with right now. That's where they're giving coaches like me some other credentialing. I've done some credentialing, but I'm just doing another one. And Author Accelerator often has a if you need a discount, and nothing wrong with that, they'll have somebody that's a trainee person work with you as a client, but they have a supervisor working with them looking at their feedback. So you kind of get a senior person. It's kind of like working with an intern as a therapist who's got a supervisor who's helping them out. So if cost is an issue, Author Accelerator is a place that you can be matched up with somebody, and they'll match you according to genre and style and those kinds of things. And that's, you can get things for a little less money. But check them out. If I'm the first thing, when I was referred to this developmental editor, I already trusted her because my publisher trusted her, but I also went onto her website and I read her material. I bought her book and I read that book too, because I wanted to see if I liked her writing, because if I didn't like her writing, it was going to be kind of a problem. And I looked at testimonials. I also wouldn't hire somebody before I'd had a face-to-face interview with them. And that could be a Zoom face-to-face like this, or it could be live. Almost always it's Zoom because geography. But I want to interview them. I want to see what kind of feedback they give. I wanted them to tell me how they work. I want to tell me what they look for, all of that. You're hiring an employee. It's going to help you with a project. So you want to look for the fit and the skills. And some editors like to offer a sample edit, like they'll do your first 8 pages or your first 50 pages or whatever that is. And I'm going to tell you the truth, I've had that offered to me and I've taken it a couple of times. It hasn't served me that much. Other people feel differently about it, but to me, I want the overall story. And it doesn't, if you only see the first 50 pages. Now, if I want feedback about, are my first 50 pages engaging enough? Yeah, and that's all I'm going to hire you for? Great. But I don't know that a 50-page read is going to help me when I want somebody to look at the whole story. Depends on what your goal is, though. And I always say that it's not unlike picking a contractor who's going to come in and redesign your kitchen. You want somebody with the skills, professionalism, and sensitivity to help you execute your vision, but better. Just redid our kitchen. Had a great idea and went to the tile store and she said, you really don't want to do that. You really, really don't. Now that the kitchen's done, she was completely right. But I had to ponder it for a while. That was in that 10%, that 20% I had to go, but I really thought that would look so cool. It wouldn't have. It wouldn't have. So you want somebody that's going to give you professional input that's they know a little more than you about some things. So your voice, your best, a little better. And also, I might add, if I'm hiring contractors to work in my house, I also want them not to annoy me. I say that because it's a conversation you're going to have. If they're going to be in my house all the time, I really don't want. No, we've all got contractors' tools, right? So you're looking for skill, you're looking for style, and really what you're looking for fit. And by the way, if 2 pieces of a puzzle don't fit, it's the fault of neither one. It's just not a fit. So I have interviewed, I auditioned 10 different people to be my audiobook reader. 9 of the voices didn't work for me. Not their fault, lovely voices, didn't work. Same thing with an editor. Somebody might have a style. My style is just right for some people that it works for. I'm not right for everybody. And in the end, you've got to remember that you are the author. They are the helpers along the way, but you are the author. And if you think about this word author, I just wanted to linger with it for a second. It means that you authorize everything that's on that page. It means that you speak with authority about this. And it means that you have authenticity. All of those words derive from the same thing, author. That's what a coach, an editor, a proofreader, a copy editor, all of those, an agent, a publisher, all the people that want to put their fingers in the soup, all of them are to help you, but you ultimately, it's your story. And that's what a good developmental editor does. So questions, one last thing though. I love what Oscar Wilde says, be yourself, everybody else is already taken. That's my long passed away puppy, but I love him so much. Edgar Allan Poe, just so you know. Okay. All right, questions. And you'll monitor Zoom in case people type a question. What questions or comments, stories? Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. But any questions about developmental editing or any of those things? Anything on chat? Okay. Yes.
On your 70, 20, 10, I was 100% right on. That's been my own personal experience. I'm glad to see it on the keyboard.
Oh, well, thank you. You know, it's funny. One person, I told this to somebody early on a few years ago. Time is gone. I can't tell how long ago things were because COVID messed me up. It was pre-COVID, that's all I know. So several years ago, I shared that ratio with somebody, and they said, well, that's kind of arrogant, isn't it, to think that somebody is 70% right? I said, I didn't say they're 70% right. I said 70% of their little feedbacks in there were right. That means when they fixed a comma or they moved a sentence, or it can be little stuff and it can be big stuff. But about 70% of it was, oh, of course. So yeah, nice to see. Yeah, Roger.
It's a kind of comment, but I really was struck by you talking about how much rewriting is really required. And we had a speaker one time who argued that you really only, if you're really good at it, only need one rewrite, if at all. First draft is all. And claimed, as a lot of published books, claimed I never even needed a rewrite. Robert Parker says he does 11. You know, I mean, and so I think there's that, but I think that a lot of our writers don't appreciate the stages or how many edits you might have to go through to get a really good product or decent product.
Hemingway wrote the ending to Old Man and the Sea 51 times. 51 times. When I look at those finished books over there, oh my gosh, the nonfiction required less writing. The how-to kind of book is a simpler writing. I'm going to admit I did rewrite, don't get me wrong, but not nearly as many times. The novel and the memoir, oh boy, honey, I don't want to tell you. And the book that I wrote, the Winchester Mystery House book, the junkie book that oh my gosh, I wrote and rewrote and rewrote and rewrote those chapters, but it was like I was putting wallpaper on before the walls were up. So I kept adding more stuff, but I didn't really have the foundation there. I'm calling it a COVID symptom, you know. I didn't have COVID, but I'm saying COVID era, because we were all so distracted and whatever. I wrote a book that really reflected my mind, my state of mind. Other questions? Yeah.
I'm thinking about a list of maybe
Uh-huh.
And then, so what percentage of that book do you read?
Okay, so the question I'm repeating for our Zoom guests is at what point, if you know, there are different points at which you can have the developmental edit, but she's saying if you're doing it kind of as you go, at what point, percentage-wise in the writing, would you enlist somebody? It varies, but I'm working with an author right now who, she's written a bunch of scenes, but they're not in a story yet at all, and she doesn't really know where the story starts. So with her, I said, send me what you think might be the beginning. And that was about 70 pages. With another person, they've written and rewritten and rewritten and rewritten the beginning 923,000 times, and they can't seem to get off of that to move into the next. Anybody else ever do this? Okay. And that's when I say, and by the way, the novel over there, the one that when I sent it to the editor and she said your page starts on 40, I had rewritten that first 40 pages about 323,000 times. So it was very overworked and overwrought. So it really depends. And I think that's a conversation to have with your person, because you let them know where you are. Have you written this scatter thing? Have you been perseverating on that one theme? Also, let me say one other thing about doing developmental editing on memoir writing specifically. How many of you are memoirists? Okay, so we've got quite a few. There's another layer there, because in addition to looking at the writing, you're also looking at someone's lived experience and perhaps their trauma, right? If they've survived a loss or a tragedy or abuse or addiction or any of those kinds of things. So I have to be really candid with folks and say, I'm gonna love you. We don't know each other yet, but I'm betting that we're gonna be friends at the end of this. And I'm gonna love the story that you've lived, but I need to look at it as a story on the page like somebody else is reading. Remember that baby bird thing? Sometimes you need to write that memoir for your own reparative or healing process. And in that phase, you write it however the heck you need to write it. You write it ugly, you name names, you do whatever you need to do for your own reparative process. But when you're looking at sharing that out in the world, it needs to work on the page as a readable story. I've read some memoirs of some people, and I'm thinking they needed an editor, particularly if they're, oh gosh, I'm gonna insult somebody when I say this, particularly if they're actors or musicians and they think they have a story to tell, and because they're famous, they just get to tell their story, and that's not always the case. They need it, because it's not I was born in a log cabin all the way till death story. It's not a biography, and that's what some people want to do. Movie star memoirs, often very bad. Often very bad. They're just telling you a bunch. It's the difference between telling.
Tragedy and sex.
Tragedy and sex. So for our Zoomers, I want to repeat that. What she's saying is she's echoing my sentiment that a lot of celebrity memoirs are poor. Also, the ones that aren't poor are very often ghostwritten. I mean, do we really think that Britney Spears wrote her a memoir when she was 18? Yeah.
I just, in thinking about what you've been telling us, with excellent presentation, I wonder, you probably haven't had this experience, but know someone who has. Seems to me, we write anthologies, which are collections of short stories, and someone wanting to publish a collection of short stories, it seems like that might be a really different challenge to a developmental editor. Because it's, they could all hang together like Nick Adams stories and Hemingway, but they have nothing to do with one another.
Right. So now we're into another territory. So I'm going to echo a little bit for our Zoom guests, and that is you're talking about the difference between editing a collection of short stories versus a novel or a narrative that's a single piece. They're tricky. First of all, let's just talk about the market. It's very hard to sell a collection of short stories unless you're Alice Munro or whatever. It's very tricky sell for New York publishing. That doesn't mean it can't be published in other forums, but I'm just telling you it's a tough sell business-wise. That said, I kind of view, if somebody's doing a collection of unrelated stories, in other words, it's not a through thread to the story, then I view it kind of like an album. Now I'm speaking in antiquated terms for anybody. Albums used to be these things that we bought that had music on them, and they were tracks. Okay. So an album of the old kind, the story, the songs were selected, deselected, there were more songs than made it on the album, and arranged in a sequence that works. So even if your stories are unrelated, if you think of them like a music album, and think, okay, what's the pace overall? Are they all? Is it 3 dead cat stories in a row? Is it, you know? I say that because I have seen 3 dead cat stories in a row in a collection of short stories. I'm telling you.
We have to.
You have to. So a developmental editor, in addition to editing each individual piece for its own intactness, may look at the whole collection and say, you know, I think that this piece really should be up here, and this is your final piece. Boy, that should go here. So there can be some arranging, or even, this isn't the same kind of music as the rest of this album. If this is all, you know, a jazz album, you got a rap tune here, it just doesn't work. So, or maybe you want rap and opera, and maybe you want that. But if so, you got to kind of agree on the design. Other questions? Take one more question.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Yes. Thank you.
Roger's question, have you ever worked on a collection of short stories that person is going to submit individually that just talks about project?
I have worked with, I'll answer the question, I think it'll work for our Zoomers. I have worked with folks that have a story that they want to submit. They want to work on just one piece. I haven't worked on a collection of short stories myself, just because it hasn't come my way. It's not that I wouldn't, it's just that I haven't. I don't feel as strong in my own skills. This is me being, if you were interviewing me as an editor, I'd say, you know, I'm not an expert in the short story form. I know it when I read it and I know what I like, and I've written a handful and done okay with them and had some submissions that worked. So I could certainly give you some feedback, but I wouldn't lift myself as the level of expert on that as I might really look for somebody who understands the short form in that way. So folks, let me close off here and just say thank you so much. And just remember that a developmental edit or a story edit is just another piece of your artistic equipment. It's your art supplies. It's one more thing that you can have in your studio to make your finished piece better. I'm going to invite you to look at creative ways that you can get input that is either no cost, low cost, or more, so that if you're wanting to get your piece ready, you can do that. And I want to thank you so much. And Judy, thank you for inviting me to your group. And I'm glad to hang out after and answer questions. Where'd that piece of paper go?
And I'm going to invite all of you to check out Betsy's books, because they are, I mean, she is so talented. Especially, I'm going to make a plug for the nonfiction book right now. From page to stage, your ability to present yourself and your work is important. And if you learn how to do it, as you can see, you don't have to be a cheerleader. You don't have to be loud.
You guys don't have to be perfect.
You don't. You need to be you, and all of you are very good at being you, but you can learn some very effective ways to be a good communicator so other people get the message.
Can I add something to what you're saying?
Yes, please.
I'm saying this because you've been hearing about building your writer's platform forever. Build your platform, and you've got social media that all of us had to hold our nose and join. And we've got our websites and our email lists and all, you know, I do all that monkey business too. But everyone tells you about you've got to build a platform. Nobody tells you that you have to stand on it. And you have to represent yourself. You are the best ambassador for your story. And you want to put some energy, time, and perhaps money into preparing yourself as part of the platform. Instead of hiring somebody to get you more likes, invest in your own ability to represent your story.
Come here for one more second. Now, the fact that Betsy has a podcast, I'm going to put a plug for this too. Being a guest on podcasts is like, I'm going to tell you, it's your number one thing to do if you want to sell books and if you want to get known and heard. A podcast is a vehicle. It may not be that there's a gazillion people listening to that particular episode, but the more you can get on podcasts, the more people will know about you and know about your books.
But you should also prepare yourself to be on that podcast well. I hear a lot of stammering and a lot of mumbling and and I think, hey, a podcast is also, it's created access for more of us. Not everybody's gonna get on Good Morning America or Oprah's, special Sunday broadcast. It's just not available to most of us. But there are podcast hosts that are dying to talk to you. And if you wrote a book about the Civil War, believe me, there is a podcast devoted specifically to that. If you wrote about sex and erotica, there's a podcast for that. In fact, there's a lot of podcasts for that one. So it's your entree. It is a new opportunity for writers like most of us that are not famous to have access to tell our stories. Plus, then you have the recording of the podcast and you can use it on your webpage and it becomes part of your platform too.
Yeah. So, just thank you. Just
Thank you all.
dipping our toes in. Before we end today, do any of the members have an announcement that they would like to share? Maybe you've just published or something else is happening. And Mara, please come up here. Is this one of the fun? Oh, yes. You always have such good stuff.
Also, I wanted to mention something
Oh,
that.
take your, yeah, they've already.
Come over a little bit more,
Stand
Brad. There
here?
you are. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
right there.
That's
Okay,
great.
great. Okay. Can you hear me with this, or should I take this off?
Take it off.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. How's that?
Good.
Okay. So, Robin was going to make an announcement, but the Zoom's not working very well, so I'll help with that. The two of us are in charge of helping to plan the October meeting because it's going to be special. This is right after the conference that we're going to have, and it's October. We're going to have a costume party, which is a literary costume party. And the theme is you can dress as either a famous character or a famous author, and people have to guess who you are. So we have all these ideas. It's going to be very fun. You can wear name tags and have like a clue so people can guess. If you're the author, you can put the time period or the country, and the character, you can put like the genre or a quote or something like that. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So we're figuring out the details, but wanted to let everybody know the October 15th meeting is going to be fun and exciting. And you don't have to put any more work into this than you really want to, but feel free to go all out. It'll be fun. So just wanted to mention that part. And also, I have a new book that I'm very excited about. I've printed out what the cover looks like because it is getting set up online for pre-orders as we speak. And there's, I think, the ebooks, a couple of the ebook sites are up and they're still figuring out the print ones. But it is called A Spectacular Silver Earthling. You can't really see it from here, but there is a robot riding that beastie from another world, and that is the main character. I like to describe him as a egomaniacal sass master because he was a rescue bot originally, and he had to
Put the cover in there.
he had to rescue humans, and he's done with that now. So
That's great.
he works in space television, and he gets to make fun of the humans, and he likes that. He's good at it. So this is one of the scenes where they are trying to do the cowboy thing and lasso this giant alien monster for science. And there's some camera people at the forefront there that you can barely see. But I had a lot of fun writing this book. Very excited about it. And yeah, a lot of fun things happen. Got some cool cover art I'm also excited about. So soon I'll have like bookmarks I can give out to people, and the actual release date is July 7th. So before next meeting, it should be available.
You'll have it for the fair.
Here's open. It should be there by then. So very exciting. Hooray.
Thank you. Thank you. That just reminded me, we are going to be at the Sonoma County Fair this year, and I believe signups are already open. So think about if you want, we're only going to be there on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday because
Sign up, Jeanne.
it will,
It's on the website.
it'll be on our, it should be up on our website. If it isn't, watch for the information in the newsletter. You'll be able to attend the whole day, sell your books, and you get to meet people, which is really fun. So Jeanne Sloan is in charge of that. If you've got questions, get in touch with her. And I think
The only other thing I wanted, oh, we've got a couple more people. Come on up. If you want, do you have an announcement? No. Okay.
Did I see our new members down here?
Yeah.
Where are our new members?
She's a new member.
Well, I have a gift for you, so I need you to come.
Yeah, real life human
You have to
contact.
come forward.
Okay, I'm gonna, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to announce that, normally.
Tell them who you
Oh,
are.
I'm Lissa Provost. And I am an author, and I am also the Director of Operations for the San Francisco Writers Conference. And we still need volunteers. Normally by this point, getting up to the conference, we would have plenty, but we're actually kind of short this year. And we need more volunteers because we are doing like COVID testing for anybody who doesn't have proof of vaccination when they come to the conference. And we are recording all of the sessions. So if you come as an attendee or as a volunteer, you will have access to recordings of all the breakouts for a year. So, but that takes more volunteers to be able to do a project like that.
Wow.
So, and they're not tough jobs.
No.
We're like using GoPros, and it's going to be great. It'll probably be a little better than Zoom, but as far as quality, but not probably professional filming kind of quality, but good enough to really get the content and see. And so I know Betsy, I think, has been a speaker at the conference before, right? Yes. So.
And of course, we have a booth.
Yes, and
The
CWC is also very involved. I know the Tri-Valley Group is doing a practice your pitch session, so there's so many great things you can do at the conference, and volunteers get to participate in just about everything. I think the only thing they don't get to participate in is speed dating. So,
Dates again?
July.
I'm sorry, I know.
I think it's the 22nd, end of July. End of July, I know. Yeah, the dates are wrong in my head because I go a little bit early.
Right.
So, to get things set up. But yeah, sfwriters.org. So all the information is on there. And if you get the newsletter at the very bottom, if you scroll down to the bottom of the newsletter, is the link to volunteer and to get information about volunteering. So yes, we do still need people.
Okay.
I just wanted our new members to introduce themselves.
Okay, so
Tell our audience who you are.
right up here.
Come
over here.
Over to the
So
camera.
they can see you,
We want
Celeste.
them to see you. Tell us who you are and what you write.
Okay, hi everybody, I wasn't expecting this. My name's Celeste, and I'm from Redwood Park, and I'm currently working. My name's Celeste Murad, I'm from Redwood Park. I just started writing, I'm writing a novel for children, fantasy.
Great.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Good morning,
No. He's hanging out, he's being.
Okay.
No, I have an announcement.
Oh, okay. Am I in the right place here?
Come over a little bit more.
Okay. So, some of you might remember my Journey to Honorsveld, which now has a new cover. That's a part adventure, part detective story, part travelogue. This one takes place in Austria. Well, it's just been republished with a new cover, some things fixed in the inside, and ta-da, here's my new book. And this is the same 4 kids, but they're older now. This is, they're older teens now. And this one takes place in France. And there's been a painting stolen from the Musée d'Orsay. And these 4 kids, of course, have to go into the other world to help figure out everything that happens. So this one's called Journey to Outremont. And I'm excited because I got 2 done now.
My name's Theo Bergstaller. I've been.
Over here.
What was that?
Right here.
Right here.
Come over. There you are.
All right, thank you, thanks, sir.
You're looking at the camera.
Oh, yeah. My name's Theo Bergstaller. I've been a Redwood Writers member since 2018, and I've written several stories on my own, confined at home because of the virus pandemic. And my first book has been published 3 months ago, and now I have another book of mine that's also going to be published. This is one copy. It'll be just a matter of time before several copies will be made. But this was entitled Fun with Solving Mysteries. The real theme is have fun, be a private eye as you read this book. Thank you.
My guess is that those of us of a certain age had a father who wore one of these. Would that be correct? Now, I'm wearing this because tomorrow is Father's Day, and I thought this was my father's hat. But I looked inside today, and I realized that it's Stanley Unger's hat, who was on the Chicago Economic Board, as his name is in the hat. Write a story about your father tomorrow. A short story, a flash fiction about your father. But you know, one of the things, just to finish that idea, I was thinking, why don't men wear hats like that anymore? And the answer is, so who are these? We haven't given up hats. We've just kind of changed them, right? The club will begin renewing membership on July 1st. Now, you have to renew online. Sometimes it won't work the first day. You don't have to renew the first day. You have 3 months to renew as a current member, okay? So if you want to renew July 1st, which I'm going to do it. If you want to wait till September 30th, there's no problem with that. But when you renew, remember that if you want to be an express member, meaning that you don't have to pay at each meeting, you pay up front for more meetings than you pay for, you need to do that express membership when you renew. Also, we encourage you, if you want, we welcome donations, of course, to the club, and you will be asked, would you like to make a donation? You do not have to, of course, but we do welcome that because the club, actually, we spend more money on all the events than we bring in through membership alone. So we're always looking for some other ways. And in fact, the event that Mara just talked about, the costume contest party and so on, may be, in fact, a fundraiser, because that would be a fun way to do that. We've been talking a little bit about that. So I just want to encourage everybody, remember that we're going to start renewing our membership. Your membership does not elapse until September 30th. So you're a member all the way through, but the sooner you renew yourself, the easier it is for us to get you in the system and so on. So just encourage you in July to think about renewing. You will get a prompt from me every month until you do. So thank you. Thank you, Judy, and congratulations.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and Robin has an announcement about the salon. So Robin, go for it.
Okay, I just want to remind folks that next Saturday is Salon, June 25th at 1 p.m. And we do still have slots available for readers. So please sign up and come read with us next Saturday, 1 p.m. You can sign up on our website at rworg.com. That's right, isn't it, Judy?
Redwood Writers.
Oh, I'm sorry, redwoodwriters.org. So sign up there and you can read. We normally have in our June salon people who write about summer, but you can write about anything you want. You can read one of the poems you're writing, from your short story, from your novel. Just read for 5 minutes. And this is our non-judgmental reading group. So come and read, have fun. We have snacks midway through our readings. So it's really a lot of fun. So come on down. I'll be sending out directions to where we're meeting a few days before next Saturday, probably next Thursday. So come on down, bring a snack if you like, and we always have a great time at Salon. So please, I encourage you to sign up and come read with us. Thank you.
July, and you'll be getting more information about that. So thank you.